It was fear. It was fear that started that. It was shameful for me. Like my family would come home and I'd try to like figure out ways that I wouldn't look like I was.
What is up, everybody? And welcome back to the School and Struggle podcast. And we're just going to jump right into tonight's topic. Before we do that, I have to welcome my friend and co-host, Todd, to the show. What is up, Todd?
What is happening? What's shaking? What's shaking, Peter? What's shaking, bacon?
I think one of the cool things about living on the East Coast is that we never have to worry about earthquakes. And we don't have to worry about a lot of natural disasters. We just get a lot of really heavy weather in the winter. My daughter is really into running around the house dancing right now. And I think she was dancing to Firework right before I came down.
That's a good one.
That's what was shaking in my house, was my daughter's 6-year-old self running around the house singing Katy Perry songs.
Cool. Yeah. I live, there's a volcano pretty much in my backyard. So when it comes to fault lines and earthquakes, at some point, we might interrupt the podcast with a little shake, rattle, and roll. You never really know.
So I often, when I get inspired and I find something that I love, I will send it to people that I think will really get something from it. So I'll often send cliches, words of wisdom, all those types of things to people in my life. And earlier this week, I sent Todd a text and he responded, "Not sure I completely agree with that." And I was like, oh, that would be an awesome episode because I really do agree with it. So we can have a little banter here. So here is the text that I sent you on Wednesday. Quote, "First, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you're inspired or not. Habit will help you finish and polish your stories. Inspiration won't. Habit is persistence in practice." And that was quoted by an individual named Octavia Butler. So often when I send these quotes or words of wisdom to people, they send me, a quick little thumb up or, "Hey, thanks for sharing," or they'll share a thought on it. And it's rare that someone says, "Hey, I'm going to push back on that." And I love the fact that Todd's willing to do that. So the whole point of this conversation, without any plans, is just to let this thing flow based on that quote. I'm going to read it one more time before we get into it. First, forget inspiration. Habit is more dependable. Habit will sustain you whether you're inspired or not. Habit will help you finish and polish your stories. Inspiration won't. Habit is persistence in practice. And you are not sure that you agree with that, and I'm curious to know why.
This is a great discussion, Peter. There are certain times when you send me things. There are certain times in my life overall when I say things or I type things and then I'm like, wow, was that really me typing that? In this case, it wasn't, but I try when I hear this and I try to take myself back to where I was when I was thinking that, I have a very difficult time doing that. But when I hear you say it again, I don't agree with that. I do agree with a couple of the points therein. I feel like inspiration can be fleeting, and I feel like habits are indeed more dependable if you're able to establish them. I don't agree with habit will help you finish and polish your stories, where inspiration will not. And if I don't know if you're looking at the thread, but what I said after I don't completely agree with that is it's in the ballpark of aspiration for me. So my thoughts around aspiration and inspiration that I've never really articulated are, to me, to be inspired to do something is the push to begin. The aspiration for me is what keeps you moving towards that. So maybe there's a fine line or a fine distinction between habit and aspiration, or maybe I'm having a hard time unwinding them. But I think that at least as it goes for finishing or polishing your stories, I think that you have to have the inspiration as a thread that pulls all the way through that. And then you have to aspire to want to complete it, as opposed to it has to be habitual. Does that make sense? So like when I think habits, I think I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, I make some coffee. These are like autopilot kind of things for me. And while you can create new habits, I think it takes a lot more effort to create a habit that pairs with inspiration than it does to have an aspiration to finish something that was inspiring. Does that make sense?
I think so. I think of habit as the action, and the other stuff as of the mind or theoretical. So, like, the inspiration is of the mind and the habit is of the action. That's not to say that we can't have mental actions, right? Like, the way I think about something doesn't have anything to do with a physical action, but that can still be a habit of mine. I often get stuck on, and I've heard that motivation is temporary and inspiration is permanent. I think that's kind of cool. So if someone were to say, you inspire me versus you motivate me, to me, those have two different meanings. That's not entirely aligned with what you're just saying. But I believe that inspiration, motivation, aspiration, to me, those are all just the kind of the fluffy things floating up in the sky and the clouds, and they don't have any meaning or any purpose, or as you'd say, any utility, unless I do something with them, right? So, like, the idea to build a house, to be inspired to build a house, the aspiration to do a bunch of research to build a house, but never actually taken any steps to build a house for me, well, then those things weren't really anything anyway. And if I often hear or often think, if we wait for motivation to get started, we're never going to get started. But if we start, seeing progress gives us the motivation to keep going. So in fact, action creates inspiration versus inspiration creating action. I believe that a habit is something that we repeatedly do, and we are what we repeatedly do. So in essence, in my opinion, we are our habits. We are the sum of our habits. And it doesn't matter what we think, it matters what we do. And I think what we think is incredibly important, but I think what we do kind of reflects that in the real world. So if I sit and just think and think and think, I think I can accomplish a lot of thoughts, but if I take action, I can do a lot of things. I don't know if that makes sense.
That's fair. I think that makes sense for sure. I think you eventually have to do something, but I don't think you have to continually seek to make new habits to get things done.
This is related, I think, and I heard this recently, is that it's really important to create habits, because when it hits the fan or you're dealing with your struggles, you can fall back on those habits. So, like, if I have an incredibly stressful thing that is laid upon me, some giant struggle that all of a sudden I was not expecting and it is now here, and I have to deal with this thing, I have to face this thing, it can be something monumental. That adds a ton of stress onto my mind and onto my body, right? And science has proven that if we don't sleep well, it does not mitigate our stress. And if we don't eat well, it does not mitigate our stress. And we have bad relationships or toxic things happening in our life, that does not mitigate stress. And same with a negative mindset, right? So if I'm working hard to have these habits where I sleep well and I eat well and I'm working really hard to keep positive relationships in my life, when it hits the fan, those things are there for me. They're solid, they're ingrained, they're in play, and I'm going to have less stress because those things won't be as negatively impacted by this thing that I'm dealing with. And those are kind of like the bulletproof habits that help support us in times when we need to deal with our stress as best we can.
That makes sense.
So I think creating solid habits helps with a buffer for when the real struggle gets real.
That's well said. Let me propose this question. What happens when you build all of your habits around physical doing or things of that nature, these actions you're talking about, and then something catastrophic happens that takes away your physical ability to take action in that way that you construct as a habit? So let's say, like your injury, like I was working out, it was great, I didn't get enough sleep, I injured myself, now I don't have that habit. So how well does that work as a foundation when you have to then be inspired to shift it, right, or something to achieve the same goal?
It does not go well.
Yeah.
It did not go well for me. I realized at that point that all my eggs were in this fitness basket. All my professional world was in this fitness basket. It's how I could connect with people. They came over and worked out with me. It's what I talked about. It's all the videos I watched on YouTube, all the podcasts I listened to. My entire life was surrounded by this thing. And when this thing was taken away from me, it was not good. And that was a really, really great lesson for me to learn. And I think I might be misconstruing or not being totally clear when I say taking action. So when I say taking action, it doesn't mean physically doing things. It means persevering through the thing in the best way that I can. So like a mindset can be a habit. And when I say doing, what I mean by that is, so I might not physically be doing anything. My body might just be in the same physical space without moving in any way. But my mindset is now stronger, or I'm much more able mentally to deal with this challenge. And that can be a habit. Is I see the opportunity, I don't see the obstacle.
Ah,
And that's a habit to train myself over and over and over again, try to adopt that mindset so that when the obstacle happens, I see it as an opportunity. And it doesn't have anything to do with my physical being, but it's how I respond to a situation. Can be physical, but it doesn't necessarily mean need to be mental. And I know there's a little bit of lack of clarity there when I talk about, well, thoughts, if thoughts aren't action, they're just thoughts. But in my mind, if I put that to action
yeah.
and I don't get negative, or I don't uh,
You're being in a
focus
way
on
instead
my
of doing.
being.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. So someone once told me, Pete, we're human beings, not human doings,
Yeah.
and that was helpful for me. So I don't. Does that make any more
No,
sense?
yeah, that totally makes sense. So it's more, yeah, it's hard to articulate. I know
Very
exactly what
hard
you're
to
saying.
articulate.
Yeah.
I think the majority of the habits that I'm trying to instill in myself are mental.
Yeah.
Like,
It kind
yes,
of
I
goes
brush
back to
my.
the values, right? Like we were talking about a couple weeks ago, right? Like these are the things that predicate the direction I'm heading. And by being in the way that's in alignment with those are the actions. That's the habit you're talking about.
I believe so. Like,
Yeah.
so when I talk about the 5 pillars of health: exercise, sleep, nutrition, mindset, and connecting, and people say, well, what's the most important one? It's different for everyone, but I think mindset is, because without mindset, then I can't have those other
Yeah.
things. And I need to instill habits in myself that are mindset based. And that's what I've been working on.
Yeah.
So when I say taking action, it's not necessarily a physical action or physically doing something, although it can be, but it's also taking action with my mind.
I got you.
And that is moving myself forward. That is persevering. That is embracing the thing. So when I talk about habits, it's not just physical habits like brushing my teeth or
Yep.
sitting on an exercise bike.
Yep. Yeah. So the quote led me awry, but yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and I think that's why is it so late in life we find that? like if you could have known that, or even had like the idea presented to you, let's say at your student's age, right? Like how much different would things be? Or do you
I
think you
say
wouldn't even have cared?
I say this to them every day. I say I feel like my job is to share with you all the cool things that I've learned
Yeah.
that I wish that someone shared with me when I was your age.
Mm.
And many of them are just not there yet. They're just not ready.
Yeah.
Although I did this semester, this is a fifth day into it. Today was day 5 of the second semester. And I said to them, if our goal in here is to be better than yesterday, I have a huge banner on the wall that says better than yesterday. And that's our goal. That's our overarching curriculum, if you will. There's nothing that says that, there's no literature, no research, nothing that I can find for high school age kids that says that spending time on social media is in line with that goal. So I've just said, we're not doing cell phones for this hour that we're together. And in the 5 days, I've seen amazing things happen with these kids.
Such
Like
as.
they're talking to kids they wouldn't talk with. They're
Mm.
connecting. They're trying new things. They're having conversations with me, and it's really special for me to see. With the habits, like this is now the habit in our rooms that we
Oh
don't use
yeah.
our cell phone. I made the old man that's outlawing phones in the class, but I think in a way that they're getting a great benefit from it, and hopefully they'll see that an hour separation from the phone is actually a really cool thing, and that they get a mental break from all the
Mm.
mental stress that thing brings, and they might learn something from it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm trying to share with them. I feel like all the stuff that we're talking about on this podcast and a lot of stuff that I focus my attention on now is stuff I've learned in like the last, like, I don't know, 3 to 5 years. And I'd love to share that stuff with them so that they can be thinking about it.
Yeah.
And I just look at myself as just planting seeds. Like I'm just dropping awareness seeds, I call them, in their brain. And, they say, when the student is ready, the teacher is present.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Interesting. Do you do anything to track that? Like for them, I know it's only been 5 days, right? But I remember I worked on something once for a nonprofit, and we were trying to capture the story of difference between the time somebody got the lesson or the seed, let's say, and then after it started to sprout. Let's put it in growing terms. And the idea was capture like asking three questions about, by me taking away your cell phone, what do you see the complication? What do you think you're going to learn? And what do you hope the outcome will be? And then repolling that at the end, like, what have you learned? what were not the complications, and what eventually did you do? Like, I wonder if there's a way to, or maybe you already do this, but is there a way that you know of that allows them to look back at it and say, oh yeah, that wasn't just, a pain in my, during that class?
Yeah. So that's been something I've been thinking about for a while. And over this summer, I read a book called Permission to Feel. And this book basically said that we're learning that the people, this sounds really cheesy, but the people who are most in touch with their emotions and can identify their emotions and then can act on their emotions are proven to be the most quote unquote successful people in our society. So I might be pissed, but am I really pissed, or am I disappointed, or am I sad, or am I anxious, or am I depressed? And when we can start to dig underneath some of those emotions to get at what we're at, maybe I'm upset, and I'm upset because one of my friends just betrayed me. All right, so I'm feeling betrayed. I'm not pissed. I am pissed because I was betrayed, but I'm betrayed. So how am I going to fix that, or how am I going to move forward with that?
Yeah.
And basically, the book was just saying, when we understand how we feel, we can accomplish a lot more in our life. So I said, all right, something that I've learned about myself is the way I feel before I work out and the way I feel after I work out are very, very different. And I didn't recognize that for a long time. And now I look back at my life, I was like, man, so many times, like I started to work out feeling this way and I finished the workout feeling this way. And then I just, after time and time doing it for thousands of times, I realized, oh, like I almost always feel better mentally after I do a workout. So this year, I wanted my students to just get a measure of, in this class, in our time together, how does this impact the way you feel? So now when they enter class, they have a sheet of paper with their name on it, and they write down where their mindset is when they enter. And I have a bank of words that they can choose from, or they can write their own. So they can write if they're miserable, they're depressed, they're anxious, they're content, they're peaceful, they're grateful, they're excited, they're joyful. They can pick any of those adjectives, and they write it down. And then we have class, and before they leave, they'd write it down again. And so I have tracked that, and I've seen marketed, measurable improvement from a kid's mindset from when they arrive to when they leave. The interesting thing is seeing the differences based on the time of day of the class. So I see the biggest improvements for the kids that are in block one that come to school, and it's the first class they have is fitness class. And they're seeing like, oh man, when I arrived here, I was tired, and now I'm feeling excited.
Yeah.
Or when I arrived here, I was anxious, and now I'm feeling joyful.
Yep.
And that, what they write on there has zero to do with their grade. I don't really focus on grades. Grades isn't the reason why I'm there. I'm there to forge a connection to help them be a better version of themselves. So they're not writing this down. Like, the more they feel better, it doesn't help their grade.
Yeah, right.
The grade is completely separate from this, and nobody sees it except for me. The way I have the system set up is a kid can't see another kid's sheet. They're upside down. And it's really, really cool for me to see that they are in a better mindset when they leave than when they arrived. And I want them to start to see that. And after a couple of months of saying, oh man, I come in tired most days and I leave here feeling joyful. Well, why is that? What's happening during this hour of my life that this is happening? And so that's kind of, yeah.
That's awesome. Great job. You should get Teacher of the Year or something for stuff like that. Something like that. Have you ever read John? I think it's John Ratty is his name. Spark.
Oh my gosh, yes.
That goes along those same lines, right?
The first chapter of that book is all you need to read. Yes, yeah. That was the book that launched my entire thing, going from I'm just a PE teacher to like I want to set the world on fire, and I want to go and I want to share what I have to share.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was huge for me. That was when I started doing the circuit. I presented out in Seattle. I went to the national convention out in Seattle.
Are you kidding me? Is there raw footage of that somewhere I could check out?
Probably not. But yeah, I did the circuit, and then my daughter was born, so I stopped traveling. But
are you going to get back into that?
I don't think so.
Oh, interesting.
I love doing this. Yeah. Like I love this podcast, doing this podcast more than you know. I just love it. It's the habits.
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree with that. Thank you for clarifying that and reforming that question, because it took a little articulating on the habit piece for me to get it, but I do agree with that too.
Would you agree with the statement that we are what we repeatedly do, and then the statement that what we repeatedly do are our habits? So essentially we are a sum of our habits.
I think we can be what we repeatedly do. Like we become what we repeatedly do, but I think that there has to be a space for there must be a space for moving those out to have growth. Like you have to be able to contemplate. You can call it habits, you can call it actions, you can call it whatever you want, methodologies. But I think that there has to be a point and a time for ponderance of what those really are, and do they actually play a role in helping you get to where you aspire to be for the next chapter, or for the goals that are coming up. Because you can't just remain the same. You can have sound framework, sound principles to build on top of, but I think that there's a shifting spot somewhere in there that you have to have a space to contemplate and pull out and switch out with new things. So partially I agree with that.
That's funny. I hear you say that, and I think to myself, taking time to do those things, that's a habit for me, and that's a habit actually for me that I'm lacking right now. Like I don't. So I heard the other day that someone who's intentional is, when you're intentional, you notice things. And that's when you know you're being intentional, when you notice something. So like if I'm intentional about this food that I'm eating, I taste every morsel of it, and I really soak up the flavor of it. If I'm intentional with my conversation with you, like I'm locked in, like I'm noticing your facial expressions, I'm noticing the inflection in your voice, I'm noticing these things. And especially having a 6-year-old, like she notices so many things that I just, like, in my busy mind, my busy world, like I just don't notice, like water that's dripping that has an icicle that's formed in a weird shape. Like, and I realized, like, I'm so not noticing so much stuff, and I need to create a habit of trying to notice. And like, I don't know, maybe I'm just neurotic about these things. Go ahead.
It's called mindfulness. Open that book you got.
Right. Yeah. So that's
Get
what
in there.
mindfulness is
Yeah.
noticing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
It's
know
just
that that's what,
noticing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly.
That's
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And it makes me wonder when you say that about your daughter. I wondered, is her mind formed enough where she has intentions, or is that just the innocence of youth, like the awe, like, ooh, that's different. And you've just seen an icicle 1,000 times. You're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's actually part of it. So like, what I was hearing was a person was saying, like, you're more mindful or you're more intentional when you travel, because you're seeing
Yeah.
things you don't normally see. And
Yeah.
that's like being a 6-year-old living in a world every day is like that,
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I always wondered, like, why am I more mindful when I travel? Well, that's the reason. It's
Yeah.
because I'm seeing and noticing things that I don't normally see and
Yeah.
notice.
It's constantly changing, right? Like you have to be aware of it, or else you might get lost, or you might miss the bus, or whatever it is, right? When you're traveling. So,
But
yeah.
I think there's so much beauty in being mindful in the day to day.
It's
And
hard.
the
Yeah.
people,
Absolutely.
it's really, really hard for
Yep.
me. And the
Yep.
people who can do it, I really look up to. And I think that those are the people who really feel fulfilled and meaningful in their life. Like,
Yeah.
I have a friend who lives in New Zealand, and every time she sees something that's shaped of a heart, she posts a picture of it. So it'll be like an egg in a frying pan, or not like pictures that she finds, but like in her real life. She'll go on a hike and she'll take pictures of like knots in trees that look like hearts, or rocks. And I'm like, man, how many things in my life have I walked past that are shaped like a heart that I'd never noticed?
Yeah.
And that's just one tiny example, but I don't know. I feel like one habit that I need to instill is the mindfulness piece. Now, do you think mindfulness is a habit, or do you think that that's something otherwise?
I mean, that's a pretty good question. I do think it's a habit. I think you have to habituate it in order to strengthen it into yeah, it's a habit. I guess you have to continually practice it in order to keep with practicing. So the interesting thing about what you just said was, you see people who are mindful more than yourself as like achieving something, right? And that's one of the minor, or it's one of the misconceptions of mindfulness overall, is you're never really going to achieve anything that's like sets you apart from anybody else. It's just in the practice is when you become aware of that thing. I remember one time after I started doing mindfulness, and I was at a park, and the kids were playing soccer, and I don't know, the soccer was going on, and this bird was at the top of this tree, and this bird was just singing like the craziest song I'd ever heard in my life. And I tapped my wife, and I was like, "Do you hear that bird?" She looks at me like I was out of my mind, and she's like, "What are you talking about? Do you hear that bird? Are you watching the soccer game?" I was like, "How can you watch soccer game when that bird's going on?" But it's just that it's like that separation. Like my intent is to listen for things outside of what would typically be going on. She's just watching soccer, right? So I didn't achieve anything because she was like, "You're nuts." But at the same time, I was like, "Man, that's really cool." So I don't know, like it just depends on what you choose to put your focus on, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this totally reminds me of something that I received very recently, and that was a text from you. I'm going to read this because I think it's
Oh,
just amazing.
here we go.
Quote, looking down the road, thinking you're going to get somewhere often causes suffering. When we stop striving for that excitement, we open to the joy of being curious as we explore the journey itself, not reaching into the future, but exploring what is happening right now. Starting to discover that it's okay to be who you are and actually finding a little bit of relief from the harsh critic in your head. That's what keeps us going in the beginning. After you start meditating, you are still walking that slack line of life. Nothing takes that away, but you might have a slightly more confident smile on your face and a bigger laugh when you inevitably fall off. I love that. That's like not taking yourself too serious
Yeah,
type of
yeah.
yeah.
That's the whole point. Like
Yes.
there's no grasping. Like these are the ideals. They're very hard to get down, but like it's just having the awareness of seeing it. You're like, oh, why am I so? Why do I care so much about that thing that now it's like consuming my thought cycles? Well, I don't need to care that much about it. It's not that big of a deal. And then you
Yeah.
begin to back up out of it, and you're just like, oh, it's really not that big of a deal. Like I could spend my time being
So one
something
question I was
different.
going to ask you as we conclude this conversation is a habit that you've instilled in your life that you feel is a really worthwhile endeavor, and you shared in the past episode that was your meditation and your mindfulness. So I guess my question for that is, what initiated, what inspired your action on that?
It was fear. It was fear that started that. So I was very close to the I wouldn't say the bottom because I had still had a lot of great things going for me, but I had made a decision to do something that was very uncomfortable, and I couldn't see where it was going to lead. And I found this book, and I turned it over, and I read, like they summarize on the back of the book, and I thought, wow, this is almost everything I'd ever like thought about. But how do you find these things? Like it's like having the treasure, but you want to hide it, but you don't know how to write a map. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
And so you're like, oh, I knew these things all existed and they sounded so great in my head, but how would one get to that place? And like, as I read down that book, I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. And from there, it was all in. And then, like I said earlier, it was just the willingness to do something different that was uncomfortable. And for a very long time, um, I would say for more than a year, actually, after I started doing mindfulness, it was shameful for me. Like my family would come home and I'd be meditating, and I'd try to like figure out ways that I wouldn't look like I was meditating, and it was very odd. I was like, "Whoa, what are they going to think of me when he's over here just sitting sitting by himself with his eyes closed?" Like that's odd. But again, it's just you have to keep practicing that habit, and it becomes more comfortable. And then you're like, "Well, who cares what they think?" And hopefully, like maybe they'll take something from it and they'll start doing it themselves. So but yeah, that's how it started for me. Was just having a realization that there was something greater than, or there was maybe a way to get to the things that I'd always hoped to find, and then just starting to practice and keeping it going. So
So the name of the book is Mindfulness: Finding Peace in a Frantic World.
that's it. I'll drop it in the
Yeah,
show notes. Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So some of what you just shared reminds me of a story that I heard actually in the most recent Tom Brady documentary called Man in the Arena. And he talks about the kind of the ups and downs of different aspects of life. And he's tried to adopt, and I apologize to anyone who's watched the documentary and knows what I'm about to say, but I think it's relevant here. He tells a story about a Chinese farmer way back in the day, and his job was to cultivate crops, and he had a horse. And one day he went out to get the horse to bring to the field to plow the field to grow the crops, and the horse was gone. And the people of the village all came running over to him and said, "Oh, we're so sorry. This is such a bad thing that your horse is gone." And the farmer, very calmly and relaxed, looked at his friends and family and said, "We'll see." So a couple of days later, the horse returns with another horse. And the people of the village come running over to the man and they're just like, "Oh, this is so wonderful. You now have two horses. What could be better? You can double your output, your production." And he looks at them and says, "We'll see." And he and his son are out training the second horse on the plow one day so that they can get more production out of their two horses. And the horse kind of moves in a funky way and lands on the leg of the son, and the son's leg is broken. And the people come running over the town. They say, "Oh, your son's leg is broken. That's such a bad thing." And he says, "We'll see." Shortly after that, the country gets into a major war, and the military is coming around drafting all the young men in all the villages, and they come to meet with his son, and they realize that his leg is busted. And he can't join the military, and all the townspeople come running over, and they say, "Oh, your son's not getting drafted. That's the most wonderful thing ever. He's not going to go to war." And the farmer looked at the people and said, "We'll see." And this is something that my wife and I have been talking a lot about lately, is in the moment we think something is good or bad, but we don't understand how it's going to impact the big picture. And if we can kind of just stay in the moment and stay in that moment of, well, this isn't good or bad, like this just is, like we'll see. I think this is a really cool little story or parable in helping me guide through some of the stuff that, you know, is the struggle of life, and helping me embrace the struggle and know this thing that just happened, I can learn from this, I can embrace this, I can use this to strive to be a better version of me.
Yeah, good reflection. We'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. It's not without effort, that's for sure. So good job, Peter.
Effort and attitude, the only two aspects in life that we have control over.
Sometimes.
Dude, great conversation. Thank you so much for pushing back on that text. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for these conversations.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Myself.
Yeah.
Cool.
For those of you that are listening, we're incredibly grateful for your ears. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. And with that said, we are out.
See ya.